to Between the Lens, your number one place for movie and TV video essays. Today we'll be talking about the famous Tony Soprano and how being in two families had an impact on his psyche. The initial idea of The Sopranos was, what if a mob boss went to therapy? The show opens up with Tony Soprano meeting with Dr. Melfi for the first time. In this episode, the show presents the viewer the question, can Tony be cured? We then spend 6 seasons trying to figure out if he can be helped or not. But first, we must identify what makes Tony Soprano one of the most iconic TV characters ever. Firstly, his character ushered in the age of the anti-hero in a show that's known for starting the golden era of TV. As the viewer, we don't want to be Tony, but we can't help ourselves to stop watching. The Sopranos hooks us back and forth between humanizing Tony, making us feel for him, and then reminding us again that his violent actions are inexcusable. We want to know if Tony can find a balance between his two sides, and if by digging deeper into his childhood can lead to some sort of hope for someone like him, or if he's a lost cause. The Soprano crew idolize the version of the mob they see in films like Goodfellas and The Godfather. The films are outstanding epics that portray murder and betrayal beautifully, and Tony's New Jersey life looks common and ugly in comparison. When the gang tries to watch The Godfather, the tape doesn't work. This symbolizes the disconnect between their mob nostalgia and their reality. Polly refers to Fredo Corleone betraying Michael, not knowing that their friend Pussy is working for the FBI. And the scene where Tony gets shot at while getting some orange juice echoes the scene in Godfather when Don Corleone is shot at buying oranges. So The Sopranos gives a nod to these iconic films, but the show intentionally deglamorizes them. The point is not just that the glory days are gone, it's that they never existed. The Sopranos also undermines our expectations of who a mafia boss is. Tony Soprano is no Michael Corleone. Tony is often seen in his robes, unable to escape the mundane irritations and everyday living in suburbia. Tony doesn't even meet his own criteria of an inspirational male hero. He's sensitive, temperamental, and prone to tantrums. Not only that, but his crew members are inept. Christopher's a wild card. Paulie and Silvio can be reckless. He even doubts his own son has what it takes. Tony's life may lack the gleam of the Corleones, but his arc does echo Michael's in Godfather 2. Michael claims that he's doing everything for his family, yet he ends up alone, having killed or driven away all of the members of his family. Over time, Tony also shocks us by killing off his close members of both his mob and blood families. For example, in Season 2, Tony is physically sick when he has to kill his best friend, Big Pussy. Killing him on a boat suggests that Tony is emotionally at sea, and this also echoes Fredo's death in Godfather 2. Tony then goes on to order Adriana's death, the girlfriend of Christopher. He shoots his own cousin Tony Blundetto, and he even kills Christopher, who had been like a son to him throughout the entirety of the show. Like Michael, Tony justifies his work with the idea that he's doing this for his family, but as much as he does love his wife Carmela and his kids, he rarely puts their emotional needs first, and he also puts them at risk with his business. Godfather 2 ends with the melancholy image of Michael in isolation, having sacrificed his family for his business. Tony likewise moves more and more to this cold emptiness as the show progresses. He shows no remorse for killing Christopher. When he dreams about confessing his crimes to Dr. Melfi, at first he performs fake grief, but then he tells her how he really feels. Michael Corleone's pain is portrayed with cinematic beauty. But with Tony, his pain is presented an ugly emotional truth with mundane, unflattering images that refuse to give us the nostalgia, glamour, or romance that we expected to see in The Sopranos. The paradox of Tony Soprano is that this big and bad mafia boss has a sensitive psyche. In his profession, Tony is expected to bury his feelings or to not have any feelings at all. He's embarrassed to see a therapist, taking medication, and having panic attacks. For the viewer, Tony's mental health struggles humanize him. We realize that he's grappling with feelings he can't always explain, and he's plagued by self-loathing. Tony resents happy-go-lucky people who don't bear his psychic burden. Crucially, Tony's family history to some extent explains his violence in our eyes. Tony's mother, Livia, is a devious, nihilistic person. She's almost like the devil on Tony's shoulder, pressing him to give in to his happiness and dissatisfaction. She manipulates Tony's Uncle Junior into ordering a hit on her own son. After seeing just how dysfunctional this relationship is, we want to give Tony a pass sometimes. And then there's the history of mental illness in Tony's family line. This is pretty much confirmed when AJ starts having panic attacks just like Tony and Tony's father before him. Tony's guilt for passing on these genes represents a deeper self-hatred. He's afraid that his children will inherit the worst parts of him. We don't see AJ and Meadow become killers, but we do see both of them suffer from depression and a sense of hopelessness. So with all this throughout the show, we make a whole lot of excuses for Tony. If he can't fully change for the better, maybe he's just inherited too heavy of a burden, and he can't get himself out from under it. The first time we get to see Tony for the unapologetic killer he is in the Season 1 episode College. Tony takes Meadow to visit colleges and happens to recognize a former mafia soldier turned informant who's since joined the Witness Protection Program. We're kind of shocked when Tony kills the guy, because we've been watching him play the doting father for most of the episode. The shift from good dad to cold-blooded killer is jarring. This episode caused a sea of change in TV. We're used to seeing stuff like this all the time now, but in that moment, The Sopranos made murderous anti-heroes fair game. As the show goes on, Tony's ruthlessness and his love for his family duke it all out. Early on, we get fewer killings with more time between them, so we have the space to wonder if he's feeling doubt or regret. But it becomes increasingly clear that violence isn't the exception for Tony. It's the rule. But by the end, ruthless Tony is the one that wins the battle for his soul. The show started with the question of whether therapy would do anything for Tony, and we get a clear answer. It's no. In season 6, Dr. Melfi realizes that if anything, her therapy sessions are enabling Tony. She's allowing him to perform the right moral emotions so he can go on behaving exactly the same without having to worry about any guilt. Melfi's conclusion makes us think back to all the times Tony tried to manipulate or seduce her and then stormed out. But we also can't forget how he opened his mind and his past to her, and at least at times, he really did want to heal. So if Melfi's had it with him, where does that leave us? Tony does have breakthroughs, and he does develop deeper self-knowledge, but in the end, not much comes of it. The abrupt cut to black in the series finale denies us the moment we've been waiting for Tony. But instead of becoming a new, better person, Tony is just a deeply confused, contradictory patient we met in season 1. Only now he has the vocabulary to describe what's wrong with him.